Your electric bill arrives in July, and you already know it is going to hurt. You open it anyway, and there it is. $180, $200, sometimes more. And almost half of that is just cooling, just keeping your house from feeling like the inside of a car parked in the sun. You pay it because what choice do you have? You need the air conditioner. Everyone does. Except it was not always like this. There was a time when Americans cooled their homes, their food, their businesses, and their hospitals using a refrigerant so efficient that the largest cold storage operations on Earth still use it today. A refrigerant that was working inside American homes decades before your grandparents were born. And then one day it was gone, pulled out of homes across the country, replaced with something newer, something shinier, something that a handful of very large companies happen to own the patents on. The refrigerant is ammonia. The story of why it disappeared from your home is more complicated than most people realize. Safety concerns played a role, but business interests, consumer preferences, and the rise of patented synthetic refrigerants shaped the outcome as well. Right now, as you watch this, ammonia is keeping millions of pounds of beef cold in meatpacking facilities across the Midwest. It is maintaining the ice under NHL hockey rinks. It is chilling the beer inside some of the largest breweries in America. Industrial engineers choose it specifically because nothing else does the job as well at that scale. It is the gold standard of refrigeration when efficiency actually matters. But you cannot buy a home air conditioner that runs on it. That gap between what industry uses and what you are sold is not an accident. To understand how ammonia ended up in your great-grandmother's icebox, you have to go back to 1876. A German engineer named Carl von Linde solved a problem that had been frustrating inventors for decades: how to build a machine that could do reliable, repeatable cooling using compression and a working fluid. His ammonia compression machine was heavy, loud, and built for industrial use. But it worked extraordinarily well. Within a decade, breweries across Germany and then America were using Linde's machines to keep fermentation temperatures stable year-round. Before mechanical refrigeration, brewing was a seasonal industry. You could only make certain beers in winter. Linde changed that permanently. By the 1880s and 1890s, ammonia refrigeration had spread across the American food industry. The Chicago meatpacking houses were among the earliest adopters. Before mechanical refrigeration, beef had a killing radius of about 40 miles from the slaughterhouse. Ammonia machines changed the entire geography of American food. Suddenly, meat could be processed in Chicago and shipped refrigerated by rail to New York, to Boston, to New Orleans. The American diet changed. The American economy changed. All of it powered by ammonia. By the early 20th century, ammonia systems were in hotels, department stores, and hospitals. Willis Carrier's early air conditioning systems used ammonia as the working fluid. The Rivoli Theater in New York, one of the first public buildings in America to be mechanically air-conditioned, used an ammonia system. By the 1910s and into the 1920s, domestic refrigerators running on ammonia were being sold to American households. They were larger than what you picture today. They made noise, but they kept food cold. And in a time when food spoilage was a genuine daily concern, that was not a luxury. It was a meaningful improvement in how people lived. Now here is the part where you have to understand how ammonia actually does what it does. Because once you understand the mechanism, the efficiency argument becomes impossible to dismiss. Think about what happens when you sweat. As it evaporates, sweat pulls heat out of your skin to fuel that transformation. That is why sweating cools you down. Ammonia refrigeration works on the same basic principle, just in a controlled loop. Liquid ammonia enters an evaporator coil inside your refrigerator or home. As it moves through that coil, it evaporates. It turns from liquid to gas, and in doing so it absorbs heat from the surrounding air. That gas then travels to a compressor which raises its pressure and temperature, pushing it to a condenser on the outside of the system. There, the ammonia releases that heat to the outdoor air and condenses back into a liquid. The cycle repeats. What makes ammonia exceptional in this cycle is something called latent heat of vaporization, a measure of how much heat a substance absorbs when it changes from liquid to gas. Ammonia absorbs an enormous amount of heat relative to its volume compared to most other refrigerants. Ammonia systems routinely achieve efficiencies that are 10 to 40% higher than the HFC refrigerants used in most modern residential systems. That number matters every single month on your electric bill. The early ammonia refrigerators were not perfect machines. The compressors of that era leaked more than modern sealed systems do. And ammonia at high concentrations is genuinely dangerous. It irritates the respiratory tract and in an enclosed space can cause serious injury. There were incidents. People were hurt and in some cases killed. That is important to say clearly. But here is what is equally important to say. Every new technology of that era had accidents. Early gas stoves exploded. Early electrical wiring caused house fires. Early automobiles had no safety systems of any kind. The question for any technology is whether the risk is manageable and proportionate to the benefit. And that is exactly what was starting to happen with ammonia in the late 1920s. Sealed compressor technology was improving rapidly. The incidents were declining. The industry was solving the problem. And then something else happened instead. In 1928, a chemist working for General Motors named Thomas Midgley Jr. synthesized a new class of chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons. The first commercially marketed version was called Freon. General Motors owned a refrigeration brand called Frigidaire. DuPont held the manufacturing rights to Freon. These two companies had a significant financial interest in replacing the existing refrigeration market, a market that ran almost entirely on ammonia and that they did not control, with a new refrigerant that they owned the patents on. The marketing campaign that followed was one of the most effective in American industrial history. Freon was presented as completely safe, non-toxic, non-flammable, and modern. Midgley himself staged a famous public demonstration in which he inhaled Freon vapor and used it to blow out a candle. The demonstration was technically accurate and deeply misleading at the same time. The implicit comparison being made was to ammonia. The message to consumers was clear even if never stated directly. The old way was dangerous and the new way was safe. What the campaign did not discuss was the long-term behavior of chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere. That would not become publicly known until the 1970s when scientists discovered that CFCs were destroying the ozone layer. What the campaign also did not discuss was that Freon required significantly more energy to achieve the same cooling effect as ammonia. The efficiency trade-off was real, and it was never part of the consumer conversation. You were told the new refrigerant was safer. You were not told it was less efficient and that the difference would show up in your electricity bill for the next 90 years. By the 1930s, the transition was largely complete. Ammonia disappeared from home refrigerators. This is how markets work when large companies have patent advantages and the ability to define what the public understands as safe. The same pattern has repeated itself many times in American industrial history. So where does ammonia refrigeration live today? It never went away. It just got pushed out of your home and back into the places where efficiency could not be compromised by marketing. The International Institute of Ammonia Refrigeration estimates that roughly 90% of large-scale cold storage in the United States uses ammonia systems. Ice rinks at the professional and Olympic level use ammonia. Large breweries, pharmaceutical cold storage, and food processing plants all made the same calculation that industrial engineers always make when the electric bill is large enough to matter. Ammonia wins on efficiency. In Europe, regulations pushing to eliminate HFCs have accelerated research into smaller ammonia systems suitable for commercial and eventually residential use. Manufacturers in Denmark, Germany, and Sweden are developing sealed ammonia systems with modern leak detection and containment technology that would have been unimaginable in the 1920s. The fundamental physics have not changed. Ammonia is still the most efficient working fluid for vapor compression refrigeration at practical temperatures. That has not changed in 150 years. There are also modern absorption refrigeration systems that can run on waste heat, solar thermal energy, or natural gas rather than electricity. Some of these systems use ammonia as the working fluid and are already used in off-grid cabins and recreational vehicles. The technology is not theoretical. You can buy working systems today. So why did we stop using ammonia to cool our homes? Not simply because it was too dangerous. Safety concerns mattered, but they were only one part of a much larger story because it was replaced during a specific historical window by companies with a financial interest in the replacement, using a safety argument that was real but incomplete. The danger of ammonia was not eliminated. It was traded for different dangers that were less visible: ozone depletion you cannot smell, and a higher electricity bill you notice, but do not necessarily connect to a decision made in 1930. The technology that cooled your great-grandmother's kitchen is still cooling the beef in your grocery store. It is still making the ice under professional hockey players. It just stopped being allowed in your home at the precise moment that someone figured out how to market an alternative that consumers perceived as safer and more convenient, while also controlling the patents behind it. That is worth knowing. And if you found that worth knowing, there is more where that came from. Subscribe, and we will keep going.